I can't stand it, you guys. I cannot stand it. I am up to here with the squirrels in our garden. And so in today's episode, I'm gonna share with you 3 simple ways to keep them out of your garden. Because if you're like me and they're digging up your beds, they're digging up your seeds, they're eating your seed, they're digging up your garlic, they're making a mess, I've had it. This is like Squirrel Central here, and we're gonna take care of it once and for all. Let's go. So about a week ago, we planted our garlic here in this bed. And within a week, they have already dug up probably 15, 16 different holes in this bed. They're just everywhere. And I've already had to poke back down about 3 or 4 cloves of garlic that ended up on the surface for them digging. Now the thing is, they're not interested in eating the garlic. They're more or less taking advantage of this really loose soil because we just planted here. So it's very loose for them to bury things like acorns and walnuts and whatnot for the winter, so that come spring they can have a food source. So this is essentially becoming their pantry, which I don't blame them. I mean, obviously, if I was a squirrel, I would be advantageous and do the same thing, but it's really annoying as a gardener to come out here and have your really pretty rows ruined by, a squirrel, turning your raised bed into the surface of the moon. That being said, I know that they're not actually consuming our garlic. And so the first thing that we can do, if they are taking advantage of an open bed that's been freshly tilled, or if they're taking advantage of just, soft soil and they're not actually interested in eating anything inside the bed, that's where I would recommend using chicken wire. Now, the reason why chicken wire is so great is because you can just roll it. Hardware cloth is also another name that it goes by. Hardware cloth, chicken wire, roll it over top of the raised beds. And that's gonna buy you enough time where they're not gonna be interested in digging because it's gonna be a little bit of a barrier, but also it's gonna allow for anything to, it's gonna allow water to penetrate through. It's not going to, suffocate or ruin anything. And once you have sprouts or the squirrels have moved on to another location, you can simply roll it back off or remove it and you're good to go. So in those cases, those are times when I would use chicken wire. Because chicken wire, like I said, it's very temporary. It's not meant to be a long-term solution. It's just meant to be something that's gonna buy you some time, and it's very effective. Now, I did wanna caution you guys on using bird netting. Bird netting is often advertised as bird/squirrel netting. A lot of times people will drape trees, like fruit trees, to keep birds and squirrels from eating their fruits off their trees, but it's also used really commonly in the same situation as you would use chicken wire in this case, where gardeners will kind of drape it over their raised bed, and it essentially acts as a barrier that, because they can't really get to it, they don't want to get tangled up in it, they don't really touch your beds. The problem is that while squirrels are generally fine, they're usually just they test the waters, they don't like it, or they might get really uncomfortable with it and then they leave. Birds, I've seen a lot of times birds get actually tangled up in it and die. And that's really sad because birds are super beneficial to the garden. And oftentimes, because it's so lightweight and wispy, birds will get their wings wrapped around it or kind of get it tangled around their claws and their feet. And then once they start rolling up in it, it's game over. And I've seen so many that just die because of bird netting. And so it's not something that I would personally recommend. It's something that I would use in like a worst case scenario. But if you have to go out and buy something, I would prefer to buy chicken wire rather than bird netting, just as a little word of caution. So now in the case of you planting something that's more of like a food source, this could be pumpkin seeds, it could be corn seeds, any type of seed that typically squirrels are going to find as food. Those are occurrences in which I would recommend using something like cayenne powder. So if we were sowing some corn seed here in the spring, corn seed is a very popular food for all different types of animals, but squirrels are a huge consumer of corn seed. Now, the reason why cayenne works is because of capsaicin. Now, capsaicin is only detectable by mammals. So all mammals, birds will not be affected. Deer, squirrels, mice, they're all mammals. And so if you have any type of seed that's becoming food, this is going to prevent them from actually eating the seed because the capsaicin creates that burning sensation. It's very undesirable. And so if you take just a little shaker bottle of cayenne and shake it over top of your seeds that you're putting in the ground, once the animal starts to dig up those seeds and consume them, they won't last very long. Well, they'll survive, but they won't find that to be appealing for very long. This is a very, very reliable method. And in fact, a lot of birdseed manufacturers are actually, quick little tip also, a lot of birdseed manufacturers are adding cayenne pepper into their birdseed to prevent things like raccoons and squirrels, mice and deer from eating the birdseed from bird feeders. And it will not affect the birds, like I said, but all the other pests will find it very undesirable. And so they might try, they might test the waters a couple times, realize it's nothing that they want to get any close to, and so they end up leaving it alone. And so you can do the same thing. If you have even bird feeders that are becoming kind of a pest problem, shake some of this into your bird seed, kind of just coat it up in there, dust them down. It's very, very effective. And like I said, this is something that you can do on seeds that you're planting, direct sowing, that are food. This is something that I've used this for years. It is very effective and is probably one of the most effective ways to keep pests out of your garden. It's not going to really reduce the damage, but it will greatly reduce the amount of loss that you have when you're just kind of feeding the wildlife, if you will. So hopefully this one helps. Let's move on to the third one. And the third and final technique that you can use with a lot of success. My grandparents used this technique, and that is peppermint oil. What they would do is they would basically just soak cotton balls with peppermint oil. And peppermint oil can be used for so many things in the garden. It is so beneficial. I absolutely love it. If you don't have just a little jar or a little bottle of peppermint oil laying around, you absolutely should get your hands on it. We use it for a ton of things. Obviously, I'll show you how we use it to prevent things like mice and squirrels. It's not 100% foolproof, but it does really cut down on the number. And what we typically will use it for is to prevent squash vine borer. We'll take a couple drops, shake it up in a shaker bottle, like a spray bottle, with a couple drops of dish soap so that it disperses in the water. We'll spray down our squash plants about once every other week or so, and that helps to prevent things like squash vine borer. They search out the scent of the squash plant, and if they're being not deterred, but if they're being confused by the scent of the peppermint oil, which far overshadows the smell of the squash plants, they don't find it as easily, and we have way less squash bugs. So just one additional way to use peppermint oil in the garden, but this is how you use it. You can use it in your home or your garden like this. Just take some cotton balls, this is all my grandma would ever do. Take it, give it a couple shakes, kind of saturate that cotton ball, and just take a couple different spots throughout your garden. I like to do 4 or 5 spots, and just kind of give it a little shake. And then that way, you're kind of making a little moat, a little scent moat around your garden. Also, if you have some big leaves, like in the case of our horseradish here, put it underneath that, because that's gonna help to keep rain off of it, which is gonna reduce how often you have to reapply. So this method is really, really effective. Like I said, is it 100% guaranteed? Certainly not, but it's a really great way to use something that is organic, very safe. It's not going to harm anything. It's just simply going to prevent. Now, there's also been several studies shown that peppermint oil helps to deter things like spiders. Obviously, spiders are very beneficial in the garden, but if you're someone that doesn't like spiders in your home or coming in contact with them in the garden, this can also help to reduce that. And lastly, ants. There's been some studies that show that peppermint oil disrupts the pheromone scent of an ant trail, believe it or not. That's how they find their way back to their colony, is through a pheromone trail. And if you put out peppermint oil, it helps to kind of disrupt that. They kind of get lost, and that can really help to reduce things like ants in the garden as well. So a few tips for using peppermint oil, but that is how we use it, how my grandparents have used it for decades. So let me know in the comments box down below if you have used this trick. And I've got one additional bonus one, which is obvious, but I figured I'd throw it in there because I'm sure you guys are probably gonna be asking about it. All right, fourth and final bonus tip here. Obviously, this one is an obvious one. Pick up your nuts. If you got things like acorns, walnuts laying on the ground, make sure you pick them up. These are what they are burying in your beds, especially in the fall. Now, obviously in the spring, different story. A lot of these will already been consumed or have rotted or will have already sprouted. But in the fall, if you just let these things lay, we're underneath an acorn tree. They have thankfully stopped dropping, but we've got to get out here and pick them up because holy smokes, there are millions of them. And oftentimes, if they're within a close proximity to your garden, there's not a ton you can do, but by picking them up and raking them up can greatly reduce their number of them, and that can reduce how many nuts end up getting buried in your beds, which is, again, that's a big reason why squirrels are in your garden. It's because the soil is soft. It's because it's loose. It's because it's open and accessible. They're not necessarily, not in all cases, a lot of times they're not looking at consuming what you're growing in your fall garden. And people think that they're eating their garlic or eating their tomatoes or eating their peppers. They can in some cases, but generally, more often than not, they're digging up your beds to plant nuts. So that's just the truth of it. If you clean up your nuts, you're gonna have much less of a problem. But obviously, this is kind of an obvious one. So just, if you're someone that leaves nuts around the ground, you might have a larger pest problem than had you picked them up. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you all learned something new. If you did, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and please let me know in the comments box down below if this helped. I can safely say we are, like I said, this is probably the mecca for squirrels. Like, our yard, for some reason, has the largest squirrel population that I've seen anywhere. And so if anyone has squirrel problems, it is for sure us. And we've used some of these techniques to really reduce their damage and their presence in the garden, despite them still being around. So I hope these tips helped you, and I hope you guys enjoyed. And as always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow bigger. Take care. Bye. Hey, thank you so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed, consider clicking this one. You'll probably enjoy it just as much. I want to thank you for your viewership, because without it, this channel would not be as amazing as it is. Also, if you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing. It's free, and we upload videos every Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. We also have vegetable seeds, fertilizer, or tools. If you need any of those, consider visiting MIgardener.com. Links will be in the description box below. We've got you covered. And as always, we'll see you all in the garden. Take care. Bye.